like I said at the uh, outset of this meeting, thank you all for being here today on your summer break, or maybe during your summer work time, depending on your role at your school. So this was a session description that maybe brought to your attention that you would want to learn a little bit more about tech sets today. We are going to learn what they are, how they help to build background knowledge for students, and then we'll learn some strategies on building a tech set of our own. And then we'll also see an example of a tech set that was created for the outsiders. So we've got plenty to keep ourselves busy in the next hour. I'm Jason Stevenson. I'm the program manager for secondary education in the Office of Standards and Learning at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. I've been here for about 6 years now. You can always feel free to reach out to me at my email address there or drop me a call during office hours. So I collaborated with some people to create the resource that is kind of the basis for this entire presentation. My colleague Naomi Watkins, PhD, works for the Utah Board of Education, their state education agency, in a similar role to mine, where she oversees secondary English language arts. And then the two of us partnered with Student Achievement Partners, and specifically Tina Starks, Tori Filler, and Stacy Wetcher, and they helped us to ideate, create the World Knowledge Tech Sets document that I'll be sharing with you later in the webinar, but I also linked it in the email that I sent to you yesterday. So just real quick, we're going to, instead of discussing with a partner, since we're on a webinar, I'll just ask someone to put their answer in the chat or to come off mute and talk. Whenever you think about S.E. Hinton's book, The Outsiders, what do you know about it? Have you taught it? And if so, how did you teach it? Was it a whole class novel approach? Was it a literature circle? Was it something else? Or what do you know about its historical context? So that's how we're getting started. Would anyone like to answer in the chat or just come off mute?
I'm Shiloh Freeman. I taught this, but it's not letting me type in my chat. It says it's only available during the meeting.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry about that.
But I did teach it as a whole class novel, is how I taught it.
Okay.
For seventh grade.
Seventh grade. All right.
I've heard and we also, after we read it, I don't know if you guys probably know, but there is the museum in Tulsa that you can go and tour if you haven't done it. And they're really good about incorporating all of the stuff from the movie and the book into your tour also.
Yeah, I've read about that Outsiders Museum there in Tulsa. I just haven't been to it yet. And then seeing some comments in the chat that people have taught this as a whole class novel, as well as small groups, 8th grade, middle school, and literature circles. So it's a pretty popular text in Oklahoma. So now, seeing the Outsiders paired with all these other, we'll call them texts, what are you noticing or wondering now that you're seeing the Outsiders put in this context? Is anything resonating or springing to mind? Or maybe you just have questions. So we've got a photograph here, a poster, a chart, a video of Woody Guthrie. I ain't got no home in this world anymore. More photographs, and then a LBJ speech on the war on poverty. Anything you want to share that you're noticing or wondering? If not, that's okay. Yeah, Margaret said in the chat, socioeconomic conditions in education. Tracy's noticing some background knowledge being built and accessed around the themes of the outsiders. So more background knowledge for students is what you all are noticing. And that's exactly it. So before we go further, though, I wanted to do one more piece of engagement, and I've got a Mentimeter ready to go for you. There are 2 different slides to answer. So once I launch this, I think you can just stay right here with me. And I think I can start sharing it with you. You may have to vote on your device, but you can also open a different tab on your computer. Oh, see, we've already just done it aloud. So you can skip that first question. But in the bottom left-hand corner, I would like you to rate yourself from strongly disagree on the left all the way to strongly agree on the right for these 3 statements. My students enjoy novel units, my students read the assigned novel, and my students struggle with background knowledge. So in order to vote, you need to join at menti.com using the code there on the screen. And I think if you click it, we can just put it here in the chat for you to easily grab. Yep, there's the link. And maybe you all can just vote directly inside Teams. Is it working for you all? Yep, some of you are able to score it there. So you might try going to menti.com and use the code 75040562. And all 3 of these statements have very similar scores. 2 are identical at 3.8 out of 5 for students enjoying background novels, but also students struggling with background knowledge. And the vast majority of you also agree that students read the assigned novel. So would anyone like to explain your score for one of those 3 statements? Why did you vote the way that you did? And you can continue to vote if you haven't had a chance to yet. But what I'm interested in now is hearing from one of you why you voted the way that you did on that Mentimeter poll. And this is maybe just in general and not specifically about the outsiders. So for any novel unit that you teach, do students struggle with background knowledge regarding it? Do they read it? Do they like it?
My experience has been that students do not read.
Okay.
If it takes more than 5 minutes and if you ask them to do anything outside of class, they do not read. A few will, but even when you give them choice and let them choose the book they want to read, they just don't read.
And that can
So
be tough.
it is. You know, I'm trying to present them even more this year with that reading anything on a regular basis raises ACT scores and makes you a better writer and all of these other things, besides just the value of reading the book, that the act of reading increases other areas as well. When you tie it to money, like scholarships, a little more interested, but in general, I'm finding kids don't read. They want an audio book or they want a video or a movie of the story. They do not want to sit down and read words.
That's a challenge that teachers are experiencing, I think, across our state and our nation as students maybe become more and more digital natives. And there's maybe an argument to be made that audiobooks count as real books, but there are situations when students do need to read alphabetic text and need to engage. So I understand that challenge. Looking in the chat, we're also hearing from teachers who are saying that students do well in the reading class, but if they're absent, it gets difficult for them to make up the missed chapters. So it sounds like students don't have individual copies of the text. It's only something they can read inside the classroom. Students from another teacher have a hard time understanding background information. And then it's just kind of shocking sometimes for what students don't know. And providing time in class for students to read. So I think this text set approach that I'm going to share with you in our remaining time will hopefully give students more of a purpose for what they are reading. It also will give them choice in what they can read, and hopefully that will resonate with them and encourage them to read more. So let's get into it. We'll have time for more sharing out and Q&A later on in our webinar time. So text sets defined, here's the definition. World knowledge companion text sets are intentionally crafted sets of supplemental resources focused on building knowledge that is complementary to a novel or a full-length work. And this set might contain a variety of resources that put multiple topically connected texts and resources in meaningful conversation with one another. So it's not a haphazard thing. They are thematic or topical, and it might be an article, a website, a poem, a primary source, multimedia, art, any number of resources. And we already saw some of those examples that were paired with the outsiders. So reasons to use a text set: it's an opportunity to deepen students' thinking about a topic by expanding their understanding beyond what's present in the novel or book or major text that is the focus of study. And it may invite students to consider additional viewpoints or perspectives, people or events. And so this can also scaffold student access to the novel by helping them increase their background knowledge about something connected to the text. So when students' curiosities and real-world context get centered, then we hope to see that student engagement naturally increase. And so those are going to result in hopefully experiences with students having increased academic growth, community and connection, agency and autonomy when using a text set. So just to get into it a little bit deeper, through academic growth, we're going to see students build their knowledge and literacy skills through grade level and standards aligned work. They will connect to other students' experiences and backgrounds through an intentional text set, and they will explore a variety of views, people, and events. And then also their choices and interests will be supported through an opportunity to select certain resources from the set, because you're kind of doing that Levin logic approach where it's like you get to choose any of the ones I've already curated for you. Maybe it's one or two required, and then all the remainder, they need to pick two more that they are most interested in. So there are 4 major steps for building a text set, and we'll look at each one in depth a little bit more, but here's the overview. The first step is to reflect on the novel or text in your unit, and to reflect on your students and what would interest them. Second is to gather those resources that connect to students' existing knowledge, could help build that background knowledge that is crucial to the novel unit, and then add additional perspectives as well. Once you've gathered all those resources, you get to organize them. And if you're a type A personality like me, that might be your favorite part of the whole process. But you thoughtfully sequence those text set resources. And then you plan for how students will engage with those resources. What are they doing with them, reading, writing, speaking, listening, after they've processed them all? So here are the reflection questions for step 1. Who or what and who is the novel about? Second, whose perspectives are included and whose are not? Are the ideas, perspectives, and content of this novel, this text, close to or far away from students? In what ways and for which students? And what additional knowledge may help my students deepen their thinking? So all those different considerations. And then step 2 is gathering those resources. So thinking about anywhere from 5 to 10 shorter texts and multimedia resources. So I have an entire category listed here for visual types of resources. It might be an image, infographic, a piece of art, videos, photographs, maps, and then a website perhaps. And then in our other bucket of potential resources, we are thinking about genres and formats, such as some primary sources or poems, or brief interviews, song lyrics, social media posts, and then something connected to science or social studies, something from one of our other core content subjects. So you don't have to pick something from every single one of these bullets, but a variety of some of these shorter texts. And then thinking through sequencing for step 3, how could one resource build upon the next? Is there maybe one resource that students should look at first in the text set, and then they could go any direction from there? Are there 2 or 3 they should look at first before they choose their own adventure? And then also considering, do you want them looking at these resources before the novel unit, during the novel unit, like once they reach chapter 5, here's the text from the text set to use? Or is it something maybe they would be looking at after the novel unit? So all those considerations as well in sequencing for step 3. And then step 4, student engagement, planning time for students to have discussion and or writing about those texts when possible, and using lightweight tasks to support students' use of the text set. And we'll talk more about what lightweight tasks are in just a moment. And then I've been mentioning this already, but identifying moments for choice. So for example, selecting 3 must-read resources from the text set, and then asking students to choose 2 additional resources from the remaining text you've identified as important or relevant. So these lightweight tasks are further defined on a PDF that I'm about to drop in the chat. And just looking at the titles of these, some of these are going to be recognizable to you if you've been in the classroom for even just a couple of years, including a jigsaw approach or a quick write or a gallery walk, notice, think, wonder, 10-word summaries, think, pair, share, and then using a Venn diagram. So what we'll do now, I'm going to put in the chat box in just a moment a link to all of those lightweight tasks and their descriptions. And I'd like you to reflect on them, and then be ready to discuss your answer to one of these questions. Which tasks have you used in your classroom? Which tasks are most effective with your students? And then that's going to be really large, I apologize. And which task would you like to add this coming year? So in one moment, I'll also put a link to that PDF. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give you a moment to review those lightweight tasks and then reflect on those questions in the chat. And let's take about 3-4 minutes to do that work. And is everyone able to access the document through the chat box? Doesn't look like it yet. You might try it now and see if you can get it to open. Just click on the lightweight task. It should open a PDF for you. Thank you, Trina, for your answer. And the rest of you, if you'd like to start putting your answers in the chat, you can, or if you're willing to come off mute and share some thoughts on those lightweight tasks, that would be great.
Jason, I love the silent conversations. It gives so many times the one kid raises their hand and always wants to talk in class. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay. Yes.
The silent conversations gives voice to our kiddos that have answers they want to share, but they're not the first one with their hand up or the first one who blurts something out. And those silent conversations are great for bringing everyone to the table. I love using those, and I love quick writes.
Thank you, Tracy. Looks like in the chat, we've got quite a few people sharing some of the other lightweight tasks that they've used. Gallery walks, 3-2-1, 10-word summary, Venn diagrams. So hopefully there's something for everyone here, feeling kind of affirmation that, oh yeah, I already used some of these, and here they are on this official document from Student Achievement Partners. But then also maybe you're being stretched a little bit too. You're like, hey, I've never tried that Post-it note approach, and I want to give that a go in this upcoming year. Okay, excellent. Any other thoughts? Someone want to come off mute and share? So if anything, I hope your time with me today has been worthwhile for just having access to that lightweight tasks table. So I'm going to read what Tochi Monteith just posted in the chat for everyone's benefit. My students love gallery walks. I post pictures of various social aspects that deal with our book. It might be something as small as the style of clothing the characters in our book would be wearing or what their car might be driving. Kids have to make inferences first as to what they think is happening. And then we discuss as a class what I'm wanting them to realize. And then also, Tochi's loving the idea of this post-it keywords task as well. Great. All right, I'm going to share my screen again, and it will only share if I announce it, right? I have to tell you all that's what I'm doing. Ha ha ha. Okay, so we're ready for step 5 of the process, which is a bonus step. If you remember earlier, I said there were only 4 steps, but this is the 5th bonus step of building your text sets, which is to gather and delve into students' questions about the topic, creating multiple text sets for students to select from, each representing a different topic or perspective, and then also identifying ways that you will collect student feedback. So I'm not advocating that you build text sets for every single novel unit that you teach in this upcoming year. It can be a lot, but maybe you can identify one unit that you want to build a text set for, and then the following year you can incorporate another one. But eventually you might be to a place, or maybe you just want to drink a lot of coffee and burn the midnight oil while you can, and give students 2 different topics to explore with a novel, because we know novels can be expansive enough, with enough themes for students to explore, that if you don't want students to only be able to choose about exploring socioeconomics and outsiders, maybe there's another group of text sets that has more to do with just belonging that students could choose from as well. So this depends how much your students can handle and how much time and energy you have on your hands as well. So I do have a document, and I think I put it in the email to you. And I have to stop sharing my screen because I'm going to show you something else now. Here's a sample questionnaire that teachers could use after a text set to get student feedback. Questions like, what's something you learned about the world and or yourself through this text set? Was this text set helpful for learning new perspectives about the world? Explain why or why not. Did you find the content of the text set relevant to you and your interest? If so, how? If not, what would have made the text set more relevant? What does this text set inspire you to do or want to learn more about? And then finally, just a catch-all, anything else you'd like to share. And then the option if students would rather just have a conversation with you. So that's a resource I can make available to you as well. The bulk of this presentation is based on this resource from Student Achievement Partners that I mentioned at the onset of this webinar, that I created with my colleague, Dr. Naomi Watkins from Utah, and then those 3 individuals from SAP. So this PDF was also linked in the email that I sent to you. And we are halfway through this document now, but just in slideshow form, because we just finished up with step 4 of leveling up. So now, in just a moment, we're going to look at an example from the Outsiders. But before we look at that example more in detail, are there any questions or thoughts that you have about text sets before we proceed? I'm flattered that my explanation has answered any or all questions, but if you do have a question later, you can always email me or put it in the chat as you have that question, okay? So let me get in presentation mode, and I don't know, let's just be gracious to the maybe one individual on this call, a handful of people who maybe don't know what The Outsiders is about. It follows a 14-year-old ponyboy Curtis, a member of the Greasers, as he grapples with the concept of right and wrong, feeling like an outsider in the divided society of 1960s Oklahoma. The Greasers are a gang of working-class rebels, so when his friend Johnny kills a teenager from the Socias, a more affluent gang of teens, Ponyboy's perspective shifts, and he realizes that pain is universal regardless of social class. The Outsiders is also now a Broadway musical, which I will be seeing in October when I travel there for fall break. I will report back and let you all know what I think about that adaptation. Also, shout out to my 7th grade teacher who read this book aloud to our class, and he did not pronounce socias as socias. I don't know if he realized it was, short for the socials or socialites. He called them the socks. And so when I first taught the Outsiders, my first year of teaching to 8th graders, I pronounced it socks in chapter 1 or chapter 2. And I had a very smart student who was also brave raise his hand and correct me. And I accepted his correction. Anyway, that's just a side note. That's just a little bonus thing. Okay, moving on. So the text set, this lens for the Outsiders is poverty then and now. So this set of resources builds historical context about the economic conditions in the United States before, during, and after the 1960s. It helps students to examine socioeconomic disparities of the past and the ongoing issues of poverty in today's society. The broader context invites analysis of multiple perspectives concerning the tensions between classes and the hardships of poverty over time. So that's what we'll be looking at. Additional themes that could be explored with other text sets include inequality, belonging, perspective, empathy, and class. And essential questions that could be asked include, what does it mean to be an outsider in society? And how does being labeled an outsider relate to the fight against poverty? So the text set resources that we're going to look at are chronologically ordered. So they build contextual understanding of poverty leading up to the 1960s setting of the novel and drawing parallels to its persistence in contemporary times. And additionally, the sequence moves between different forms of text and media, addressing visual, emotional, and data-driven perspectives on poverty. But sequencing is flexible depending on your students and the instructional foci over the course of the unit. So you could not, present them not in chronological order if you didn't want to. So here's how they all pan out chronologically. We already had a preview at the start of our webinar together, but there's their different categories and publication years. So we've got the famous migrant mother photograph. And if you ever have seen other versions of this photograph, it's quite powerful to think about revision through that lens. If you ever want to teach your students about revision by using some different examples of this Dorothea Lange photograph. And then we won't listen to the entire thing. And also, you'll need to let me know if you can hear my audio if I click play. But I Ain't Got No Home in This World Anymore by Woody Guthrie would be another text made available to students.
We can't hear it, Jason.
Okay, I'm turning on high fidelity audio mode because Teams recognized I was trying to play something. Let's try now. Yes? You can hear. Okay. So we'll pause there. I'll say universal design for learning would necessitate having hard copies of the lyrics to this song in addition to merely just playing the video for students. And then a series of photographs on the war on poverty could be made available to students. But then there is a more modern version of that photograph series called Looking at Appalachia in present day for students to compare and contrast those photographs, which could be interesting. The American Experience from PBS has LBJ's War on Poverty address, only 2 minutes long, very short, for students to listen to and examine, and then some works, some posters from the Poor People's Campaign around that time, and then also continuing on more into present day after The Outsiders, some lyrics by Tupac Shakur and Tomorrow, and then some historical poverty trends and measurement, which comes even closer to present day, which shows that in 1976, the child poverty rate in Oklahoma before taxes and transfers was 26.2%. But by 2014, that had reduced a small amount to 24.8%. But after counting taxes and transfers, it had dropped all the way to 13.8. So some interesting data there for our more mathematically inclined students to consider. So there are suggested tasks paired with all of these texts from the text set, including connecting to and building upon the knowledge gained from both the text set and the Outsiders, and then providing opportunities for application to students' own lives and real-world context and student-driven learning. So there are 3 different task options to consider. The first is a Socratic seminar, exploring socioeconomic disparities, so students engage in thoughtful reflection on themes related to class, economic tensions, and being considered an outsider in society, and the teacher would facilitate a Socratic seminar during which students explore the following questions. What were the intended goals of movements to fight against poverty? And how did these goals align with the struggles from different perspectives and experiences that we explored in the Outsiders in the text set? Task 2 is community and civic engagement research project, where students create digital media presentations centered on poverty and economic disparities in their state or community. And these presentations connect to the historical context built from the text set, include localized action being taken to address local poverty, and increase awareness and inspire action to address these issues. And then the third one, voice and choice, engages students around the questions: who might be considered an outsider in our community today, and what changes could be made so that they could become an insider. So they have 2 options: a research option using 2 articles from their own research to support a response, or a literary option, which character from a piece of fiction we have read could also be considered an outsider. So not from the book The Outsiders, but something else, and why, and use evidence from the text in your response. So that was a whole lot. We maybe could turn and talk to one another if we were in person. But any takeaways, aha moments, considerations, questions, now that you've looked at the text set a little bit more in depth and seen those 3 sample tasks? Is anything resonating for you before we move on? If you don't have it in front of you, I'm going to go ahead and try to share the World Knowledge Text Sets PDF with you there in the chat, which is essentially this presentation, but in a more condensed 4-page format. And the way that this section ends is to challenge you, the teacher, to consider how might you build your own text set. What possibilities exist for building a text set about a different perspective or topic that would pair with the Outsiders, or that would pair with any of the novel units that you teach in the coming year. And if you do teach the Outsiders, would there be another lens you could explore as far as being an outsider through an additional text set? So I want to give you some resources and ideas, and I've already seen some people sharing these in the chat, which I love, on places that you can visit that have some great resources for building a text set, and some come pre-packaged, which you could then supplement or tweak as needed. So Common Lit, which requires a teacher email address but is free, they have something called text sets as well as book pairings. I'm sorry it's a little bit confusing, but their book pairings are the text sets I've been talking about in this presentation today. Whenever they have text sets, that's something else. So I'm going to show you in a moment what their book pairings look like. But you can also visit the website ReadWorks, which also requires a teacher email address, but is also free. Science News Explorers and All Sides, and all of these are going to be great prose resources. So the book pairing that Common Lit prepared for the outsiders included a number of poems. We Real Cool, Nothing Gold Can Stay, obviously. What Love Isn't, Oh Captain, My Captain, and If. They had 2 psychology articles, Herd Behavior and Self-Concept. They had a news article, Healing Brick City, a Newark doctor returns home. And then they had an essay of revenge. Looking at all of these, if I were in the classroom, even though I love poetry, I would only choose one of these poems. I would not throw all of those poems at my students, even though Common Lit said, here they all are. I'm pretty interested in both of those psychology articles, though, so I might consider including both of them. The way that they provide their pairing guidance is really helpful on Common Lit. This is that herd behavior article we just looked at. So it's provided with the Lexile reading level, identified as 7th grade. There's a brief describes how individuals change when they're part of a crowd, and then when and how to pair it. So they even say, hey, around chapter 2, that would be a good time to use this article. So that's super handy and helpful. So they have similar guidance for all their text. It's always a summary, when and how to pair it, and then a Lexile score if it's prose. Poems don't get a Lexile score. But they have 136 pre-made book pairings for very famous novels and plays that you may indeed already be using in your classroom. So book pairings for Night, 1984, The Giver, The Odyssey, Romeo and Juliet, Lord of the Flies, Great Gatsby, TCAM, and more. But they have 136 total. So it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't before. It also sounded like ReadWorks had some pre-made text sets as well. And then as far as finding poetry, some good search options include the Poetry Foundation, which has the ability to search by subject, occasion, and holiday, the Academy of American Poets, and you can search by occasion or theme. And then American Life and Poetry has over 80 different themes that you can narrow your search by. So I recommend all 3 of those. For art, you can use the Art Institute of Chicago's Open Access Images, the National Gallery of Art's Open Access, Smithsonian American Art Museum's Teacher Guides and Resources, or the MoMA's collection. So all great places to find some art. So again, I've been talking a lot, and I want to give us time to reflect, share, ask questions. So that's what we'll do now. So for which novel unit will I create or find a text set? How might my students respond to a text set? And then what questions do I still have? So there's those questions for you there in the chat. And you can respond by typing, or you can come off mute and share as well that way. Thank you for those responses there in the chat coming through.
My chat, I still can't get it to work. I was just gonna say, my 7th graders, we read The Giver this year and they really liked it. So I think it would be a good thing to do a text set for The Giver. And I liked on that one slide you showed, I think it was for Common Lit, they had resources on there, I think you said. So I'm gonna check that one out.
You know what? We have the time. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is what it looks like on Common Lit. I'll zoom in a bit. So they've got 136 book pairings, and they're organized by popularity, I think. Or that's one way you can sort them. Yep, most popular. So we see The Outsiders here on the screen, and To Kill a Mockingbird. Surprised The Giver isn't listed sooner. But let's just search for it. So book pairings for The Giver. We've got Drones Put Spying Eyes in the Sky, Total Control in North Korea, informational text, Would You Marry a Stranger, What Your Most Vivid Memories Say About You, Burning a Book, a poem by William Stafford, a speech called Fears Simple and Profound, Nazi Germany's euthanasia program, and so on. So would anyone else like me to pull up a book pairing for a different title? See To Kill a Mockingbird listed, so let's go there next. So an overview of the Great Depression, the child of slavery who taught a generation, herd behavior again, Ida B. Wells' Southern Horrors, Lynch Laws in all its phases, the Scottsboro Boys, which you were just mentioning there, Nikki, and Obama's remarks on the Trayvon Martin ruling. There we go. And then something to do with the Holocaust. Is there a particular text about the Holocaust that you all are using? Is it Diary of Anne Frank? Or is it Night by Elie Wiesel? You might pull Night up. Introduction to the Holocaust, Auschwitz, Death Marches in the Holocaust, Liberation of Nazi concentration camps. And the United States National Holocaust Museum has a ton of resources for teachers. If you've never explored that website before, I would recommend using that website for building text sets if you're going to be teaching about the Holocaust. I don't think I'm sharing my screen, but I'm pulling up a link to that resource for you. Here it is. Anything else? Well, I hope you'll give text sets a try this year if you haven't before, and keep me posted on how it goes. And if you're going to use a text set that's pre-made, just be really thoughtful in which pieces you do want to include. You may want to include all of them, just some of them. Just kind of depends. And I've got just 2 more slides and we'll be wrapped up in our time together. And really, it's just going to be 1 slide and then a quick survey task for you if you don't mind. So this is just a little bit of PR on my part. I'll be traveling around the state, but also have a virtual option. Some of you like the virtual option this fall, and I'll be presenting on the topic of universal design for learning and secondary English language arts. If you come to the in-person session, it will more than likely be in the morning, but sometimes it might be the afternoon. Those details are still being finalized, but we've identified our dates and locations so you can see which region of the state I'll be nearest to you. this fall. And then if you'd rather attend the virtual meeting, we're going to compact all the information into just 90 minutes. And that one will take place on Tuesday, October 22nd. And I think I've got that scheduled from 6 p.m. to 7:30 that evening. So the last thing I need from you before you go, if you don't mind, is a quick little evaluation survey. And if you'll complete that, that helps our office keep track of the PD that we give, what we're doing well, and what we can improve on. So I'm going to put the link to the survey there in the chat, if you don't mind completing that. And then when we hop off this call, I already have a PD certificate ready to go, and I will email that certificate to you for those of you that like to have that for your records. And there is a UDL webinar next Thursday, but it will only be an hour long and not the deep dive that will take place during the fall regional workshops. So Charlene, good memory if you're registered for that one. Can definitely do both if you're interested. Okay, I'm going to hang out with you all right here on the screen while you complete that survey. And then if you've got any one-on-one questions for me, I'll be here. But thank you for being in attendance. And if you're planning to attend Inspire next Monday in Tulsa, I will see you there. And if not, maybe I'll see you at the UDL webinar that we have scheduled for next time. And once you're finished with your survey, just feel free to hop off the call. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.